I guess since October 7 kind of opened our eyes on the way that I couldn't even imagine it would be time like this that our nation, and especially the Jewish nation, will go through such a difficult time. It was hard to believe how the world is silent, and every human rights movement have been so silent to the fact so many babies got killed, women raped, pregnant women viciously murdered, and so many other stories. Innocent people just died, and some kidnapped and still hostages in Gaza. So it was a wake-up call. To the point I had to convince myself, like, this is real. Nobody really cares. When I rally at different places, including Columbia University, I met a young girl from my district, from Great Neck, who was so terrified, and she told me, I don't think I will be able to survive this. It's too much. Mazi, I'm shaking, I'm afraid. I'm gonna go back home. I hold her hands and I told her, no, you're gonna stay here, and you're gonna fight this. And it's really touched my heart, because that's not right. No woman or no Jew should go back home because they are so terrified. So many mothers called me and they said, we're gonna bring the kids back home. Nobody there protecting them. I can tell you one story. Right after October 7, I was at the mall trying to get something for my kids. And as I was walking, a woman came from the back and she said, Mazi, I know you think I'm crazy, woman. I know you. I saw your speech after October 7. I have your videos. I was crying when you spoke. I want to tell you something about myself. I said, yes, go ahead. She said, I am Ashkenazi Jew who fought for everybody's rights, for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights. I was there every rally. And now, when my people got attacked, nobody's there to tell me everything's gonna be okay. And she was crying. And I hugged her and I told her, you are not alone. This is painful. I have my own family in Israel. So that is the reality of our generation, facing this horrible time and dealing with this every given moment, especially after October 7.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, you've spent your entire career investigating war crimes and mass sexual violence. You were in Bosnia, you were in Rwanda, in Ukraine. What shocked you most about October the 7th? And of course you can speak about what you spoke to me before as well.
Right. Well, actually, I haven't been to Rwanda or Ukraine, but I have certainly researched those situations. And what I want to say about October 7th is in the context of a broader issue. And the broader issue is this is happening all over the world. And the first time I came into knowledge, which as a Jew, once you have the knowledge, you have the obligation to act, was the rape of 50,000 women and girls in Bosnia during the war, 92 to 95, followed by Kosovo, 20,000 women and girls and boys as well. Ukraine, in the first week, it was reported that women were being raped. And also later, I was able to get information that men were being raped. There's a correlation between detaining someone and then they become a sexual assault victim. I would just also add that it wasn't until Rwanda and Bosnia where those crimes were actually prosecuted for the first time in the history of our civilization.
Wow.
Because of the acts of a prosecutor and a judge who were both put in a rape camp. They took over 200 witness statements, went to The Hague, they presented them to the prosecutor, and they agreed that finally, we were going to prosecute rape as a war crime. Similarly, in Rwanda, a mayor ordered women and girls to be raped. His name was Akaseyu. That decision resulted in rape as a component of genocide, which is very significant. So when October 7th happened, I knew based upon all the wars that I looked at, Congo, Kosovo, Ukraine, just Ukraine, it was happening. It was happening in the moment, absolutely. And I knew that women and even men would be raped and mutilated. But what was most remarkable about October 7th was that everyone in the Nova Music Festival area, if they were raped, they were also executed.
Yes.
There were no survivors. And that bore out because...
And the kibbutz too.
Yes, in the
Those that were
kibbutz,
raped were murdered.
that's right. So I actually went to Israel a year ago, last month, in a delegation from Kosovo. Now, you might think that's really, that's odd, but the president of Kosovo is a woman. She's not the first woman president either, I would add. She's the second. What she did is she appointed a survivor, Vasfia Goodman, as a presidential envoy on sexual violence during war, which is, I think, also a remarkable indicator of her great leadership. And she reached out, because Kosovo had diplomatic relations, and she reached out to the government and said, unfortunately, we have experience with this issue. We want to help you. So they sent Vasfia, and I am a member of Vasfia's board of directors. And she asked me to go, and I said, this is a mitzvah, a great mitzvah. You're taking me to Israel for the first time as a Jew, and I'm going in this capacity, which was personally remarkable, and also I was very torn by it as well, because I was very, very sad at the same time. So anyway, we were taken to every location where the attacks were carried out. And we met with Zaka, we met with the
Zaka, the people that
identify
the bodies.
bodies.
And they come and collect all the pieces of people.
Remarkable people.
Yeah.
I would also add that we met with members of the Knesset, and I advised the members of the Knesset that everyone that is a hostage is more than likely to be sexually assaulted.
We know that to be true now.
Yes, detainment results in sexual assault by lawless human beings that carry out these crimes. So the other aspect to this was I saw every area, and I was very overwhelmed by the Nova Music Festival area because there are pictures of all the young people that were there, staked into the ground, all those who were murdered. It was very emotional. And actually, Vasvia was really triggered by that situation.
And a lot of your investigation there and was actually put into the Israeli newspapers. That's how
right.
We found a lot out about exactly what had happened.
That's right. And I felt it was really, really important to write about what I saw as a professor that has worked on these issues, but also. I was really grateful for the opportunity to make that contribution. And fortunately, some of my research has been picked up in a new book called The Veil of Oppression by Dr. Mia Bloom and the Jihad, Global Jihad with Women. Anyway, all I can say is that what I was really struck by is the amplified brutality. The amplified brutality was...
The survivors of the Nova, I worked with them last year, they all stated that the thing that really cringed them the most was hearing the laughing and the joyousness of the terrorists as they were...
And this was reported by the Israeli Physicians for Human Rights report. They contained that in their report, that they were laughing as they were cutting off limbs or cutting off women's breasts or mutilating men. They laughed, which is it is an exceptional observation I have of this war that separates it from others and these attacks.
One performer in Israel said that a definition of anti-Semitism is hating Jews more than necessary.
So indeed, the brutality of those killings and the way they killed people and destroyed their bodies is absolutely an indicator of anti-Semitism, the pure hatred and the brutality of it. So I am, of course, rapes continue in Ukraine as we are sitting here. Rapes are happening again in Sudan. This is so heartbreaking. Not only are they happening again, and it's off our radar. Nobody knows what's going on in Sudan. And women there have been repeatedly raped like 13, 14, 15 times, one person. And what they have done to resist it is that they have come together in suicide pacts and they've been killing themselves. That's how horrific the conditions are on the ground, in the middle of a famine too, I might add. Rapes are continuing in Rohingya, in Ethiopia. This is a burgeoning crime against women. I call it femicide. Let's call it for what it is. This is femicide. This is absolutely femicide, and the world is not responding. The world is not responding. I also write about why prosecutions are very limited and really don't happen that much, and also we don't have enough courts of jurisdiction to address these crimes. But because of the Bosnian women and because of the Rwandan women that testified, and with that in tremendous courage, we now have, under what we call in international human rights law, jus cogens, that the International Criminal Court is obligated to prosecute rapes when it comes to their attention. So once again, and this prosecutor has indicated that they had evidence in Ukraine during the annexation of Crimea in 2014. They kept that case open. They've added to that case. The state prosecutor in Ukraine has prepared more than 250 cases that could be prosecuted. And the last thing with regard to Israel is that, yes, I know people are upset with the UN. There are reasons why the UN doesn't necessarily speak about specific crimes. However, they should have said, this information has come to our attention, we're deeply concerned. But Pramila Patten, yes, Pramila Patten, they didn't do that. Yeah, that's right. But Pramila Patten, who's the Undersecretary General for Sexual Violence during she did write a very thorough report and did confirm that crimes were committed. And that is one of 3 reports on Israel, the second one being by the Rape Crisis Association called Silent Scream. And so there is ample evidence and evidence that, in fact, these crimes took place. It is incumbent, I'll just say one last thing, it is incumbent on the government of Israel to carry out a thorough investigation, and there are colleagues there that are doing this in an informal commission. Yes. So that's...
Thank you very much, Tanya, Domi. Thank you. You have a microphone?
I think
Yeah?
I do. Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
I do.
Okay, so Logan, I'm giving you your doctor.
That's okay. No, please.
Okay.
Logan is
so for
works.
years, your work has actually focused on open and honest talks about sexuality and relationships and the positive side
Yes.
of sex. And after October the 7th, you found yourself in a situation having to make a choice whether to continue as usual or to step into the fight. So just tell us a bit about this process, what it was like, and what happened to your career from there.
It's an important question. Look, I don't think that any of us are the same after October 7th.
No.
But truth be told, I wasn't the same years ago. I've always been an incredibly proud Jew and an incredibly proud Zionist. I'm the granddaughter and great-granddaughter of American Zionist leaders. My grandparents lived in Great Neck. I have a sense of purpose and always have about who I am. And about 5 years ago, in addition to the anti-Semitism that my son was experiencing in his independent school in the Bronx, I watched my field, the field that I had been a part of for 30 years, people whose voices I had amplified, people I stood next to, I cheered with, I supported. It was in May of 2021 at the last big, Hamas flare-up. I watched all these people in my field, my mentees, my students, my friends, call Israel Goliath and Hamas David. And I remember I was sitting on my couch and I started to sob, and I felt totally broken. And I could not believe that these people who I had devoted my life to could betray me in this way. Little did I know it was going to get worse. At that moment, I decided I never hid who I was as a Jew, ever. But I made that a decision that I was going to lead with that first and foremost. And if I was going to walk into a room, you were going to know who I was and what I stood for. And since then, to be honest, while my sex ed career in schools was still in play, my media life sort of went like this. Now, we can debate whether or not, like the chicken or egg, scenario, but I mean, if I had to guess, it was that my platform became unapologetically pro-Israel. And on October 7th, I can't say I was surprised by my field, but I was surprised at how unapologetic they would be with their inability, or ability, I should say, to twist themselves into knots to justify sexual violence as resistance. The people who believe in bodily autonomy and queer rights and consent and sex work all of a sudden became unapologetic Jew haters, to the point where I was on a listserv and someone wrote very publicly, there is no room in the sexuality professionals for Zionists. I was in Israel at the time. It was December of 2023. And I looked at my family and I said, I'm going to need a little time. And I proceeded to write a piece. And from then, I kind of did not stop. I have been a very humbled founding sister of the I Believe Israeli Women movement and delegation. We have traveled to Israel multiple times to study the sexual violence. If I was relentless before October 7th, and if any of you know anything about me or choose to, I was pretty loud before. Now I am wild. I have a take no prisoners mentality for anti-Semites, for people who claim to be feminists but are not. I believe that it is absolutely this is our moment. And I know that we are hearing horrible things, and it is, the atrocities are unfathomable. But I would say this. Our history has proven that we have survived despite the odds being stacked against us over and over again. Survival, thriving is in our blood. We were made for moments like this, and we should never forget that despite how hard this is, we are part of a winning team. We know how to do this, and we just have to find that fire and make sure everyone knows.
Thank you very much. Okay, round two. Are you ready, Mazi? Good. So, as a woman, an elected official, and the people's behind the mask bill in Nassau County, yes, I was intrigued by this mask bill. Why was it so important to you? What does it mean? What did it mean for you to help pass this legislation? And how has the bill actually brought attention to the issue in New York and beyond? Can you give her the mic?
Thank you. Thank you. So after October 7, we saw terrorist supporters hiding their identity and attacking physically and verbally our Jewish community everywhere around the country, and especially in New York. And I felt this is unacceptable for people who would like to have or to practice freedom of speech and to rally and to support, to come to rallies in public places, hiding their faces, and viciously attacking the Jewish community. And I wanted to pass this bill because this bill was here over almost 170 years in New York State. The reason why they passed that bill years ago is to protect the minority from the KKK. So that was the reason why they did it. But when COVID came, they canceled that bill, that law, and I said, this is the time to bring it back. And it was very important for me to pass this bill. And I received a lot of support from our community, Jewish, non-Jewish community. And when we signed the bill, I can tell you the amount of mothers, women that came to the Nassau County to support and to show their appreciation, it was amazing. And a lot of people, even outside of New York, other states, who approached me and wanted the copy of the bill. And this bill really came to protect everybody's rights. This is unacceptable to hide your identity and to viciously attack anybody. That's not acceptable. And I'm hoping the same things will take place in New York State because a lot is happening. Just a few months ago when a couple of protesters hide their faces and they were screaming in the subway, telling, if you are Zionists, leave the subway. One of the girls who was there in that subway was somebody that I know from Long Island. The father called me as soon as I was talking about this subject, and he said, do you know, my daughter was taking that ride, and when this guy came and screamed, if you are Zionist, you have to leave the subway, she was so terrified. She had Star of David necklace. She hid that necklace, and she ran away. And she called her dad, terrifying and crying. That's not right. So things like this, we have the obligation as elected officials to do the right things. We have to do everything in our power to hold accountable people who are trying to break the law. And I was very proud to pass this bill, and I'm hoping again others will follow this. Thank you.
Okay, Tanya. What does Jewish by choice mean? Tell us a bit about this choice to convert at a time when so many Jews are hiding their Magen David and taking off the kippah, that you are doing exactly the opposite, and how it shaped your response, this choice of yours, to the current wave of anti-Semitism.
Well, yes, I had converted the year before, October 7th, and I was in the process and I had joined my synagogue, which was a requirement, obviously, during the Pittsburgh attacks. I was not Jewish, and I was really, really very disturbed that I wasn't. And as I mentioned to you, as I have a personal joke, is that the Exodus took 40 years and I took 30 to become Jewish. Anyway, on the day of October 7th, as many of you probably know, that was Beit Simchat Torah Day. That is the name of my synagogue, and that was the first day I held Torah. Wow. And of course, we didn't dance on October 7th, but we did honor the Torah. So this has been a process of mine for many years. I went to Washington after I left the Army, and I had worked in the Hawaii State Senate. And when I came to Washington, I was a congressional aide, and I began working on issues, a lot of social justice issues. I eventually did leave the Hill and was working full-time as an advocate for people's human rights. And I kept meeting one righteous, incredible Jew after another. And I kept saying, who are these people, and why?
What are they eating?
What are they eating? What are they drinking? And why do they engage with such ferocity and love and kindness? And so many of them became personal mentors to me, really dramatically changed my life. And when I began to understand Judaism about its values, those values are the values I was already living by, and that it was embodied in so many people that were Jewish that personally came into my life. And I met my rabbi in 1992 in Washington, and didn't join her synagogue because she was in New York, and it was in 2023, almost 30 years later, that I became Jewish. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I have a difficult question for you now. You've spent your career educating youth about healthy relationships and sexuality. I want to bring you all into a very, very specific situation. After the 7th of October, my sister's youngest daughter, she's like 12 years old, and like many other children, they were exposed to horrific things, and suddenly she asks her mum, my sister, "Mommy, what's rape?" And my sister almost chokes, and she tries to give her some kind of evasive answer, and her daughter is very, very not acceptant of evasive answers. She says, no, rape, what they did to the women and the girls at the kibbutzim and in the party. What is it? What is it? And she says to me, how can I answer this question? She has 2 older boys. She was waiting for her mother-daughter talk to tell her about the wonders of sexuality and of intimacy. And she said, my little daughter, she hasn't had her first kiss yet. Is my first sex talk with my daughter going to be about what rape is? And so I want to ask you, as a sex educator, you also visited Israel and you met survivors and you heard stories. How do you think we should approach conversations with youngsters and globally as well about what happened? Has their innocence been stolen, or is there a way we can save it?
So as a sexuality educator, my expertise is in child adolescent sexuality and parent-child conversation about all things under the sexuality umbrella. And I'm going to start with the last question about innocence. My belief, my professional and personal belief, has always been that a young person's innocence is stolen when they ask us a question and we do not give them an honest answer, and they find out from someone else, right? Our kids want to know that the people that they love and trust unconditionally are going to be there to answer the tough questions. That's the innocence piece of it. I think that it's really important that we acknowledge with young people how challenging these conversations are. I think it's okay in this instance to say, I want to answer this question and I want to tell you what's going on, but I recognize that I haven't yet had the opportunity to talk to you about all the amazing, wonderful things that have to do with your body yet, and for that I'm sorry. Because this shouldn't be the first conversation that we have, but in light of everything going on in the world, this is where we are. So I'm sorry. And with that, we also talk about the joys of intimacy and bodily autonomy and pleasure and relationships and partnerships, and acknowledge that sexual assault is not sex. Sexual assault is a crime. We do not put it into the same category as sex. Sex is intimate and wonderful and consensual and takes lots of different forms. What we are talking about here is a crime, right? And really make sure that we separate the two. And it's okay for kids to ask questions. They should be asking questions. And the hard thing for all of us, particularly post-October 7th, is for us to find a way to still model to the best of our abilities what healthy relationships look like when things are really hard, right? And that requires self-reflection for us too. Who are we? What are we modeling? What are we putting out there? And also to admit when maybe we've made a mistake. And it's okay. Because the truth is, when we are humble and vulnerable with our young people, it sends a message to them that they're worth this rawness from us. And it goes a long way. And I think it's okay to sometimes say, you know what? I'm not sure I can answer this right this minute. I want to think about it. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information, but I promise I'm going to get it to you. I mean, that sometimes we don't do that, but in this case, we need to come back to them. But again, innocence is about asking you a question, and we don't tell them the truth. And I would say this as a last thing, you know, this is a generation these days, at least here in the diaspora, of a generation that gets trigger warnings. Jews have never been afforded a trigger warning, ever. Right? So I think that we forget that it is okay to have tough conversations with young people. As Jews, it's a part of our story. But we also talk about the joy and pride that we have in our story. We can talk about the tough things, but we infuse them with the pride and joy and stories that we carry with us too.
Thank you very much. Beautiful answer. We are soon finished. We have one last question, an identical question with which I would like you all to answer in one sentence, okay? So that maybe we'll still have time for a question or two from the audience. The identical question is, what can they do? What are the audience going to take home? What is the small or big action that everyone in their own private life can take? So, you can do it in popcorn Sister, whoever wants to answer that.
I think each one of us have the obligation to do something when we talk about fighting anti-Semitism. Last week I was in my synagogue. We had a guest, member of the Knesset, who came, and he said something very, very important. He said, when history is calling you, no Jew should stay home. Each one of us have a power, a voice. We can lead our community. A lot of time people will tell me, Mazi, thank you for everything you do. And I'm asking, why are they thanking me? This is my obligation. This is a call. I have to do that. And to be honest, on October 7, I promised myself I will fight. I promised myself to be in the front line. I promised myself I will be the voice for my community. Since then, no fear. I will walk in front of the rallies, in front of terrorist supporters. I will speak, which I did in front of them. They call me, you are baby killer. You are IDF soldier. They printed my picture during the army service. They thought they're gonna scare me. I look at them and I told them, I am proud former IDF soldier. So this is, you don't have to be elected official to do your part. Last week, I want to say that, I was in Roslyn. I joined a small group of people who have been meeting every Sunday and walking for the hostages. Last Sunday, if you remember, was the coldest day. I walked with them 45 minutes. I couldn't believe that. It doesn't matter how cold, snowy, rainy, hot, small group of people. I'm taking you like 10 people.
We'll get to the hostages.
They were walking every single Sunday to remind everyone we still have hostages in Gaza. So keep up the hard work. Don't be afraid. Educate everyone. Tell the story about Israel. If you visited, if you saw Israel, you know how diverse this country is about. Talk, educate, don't be afraid. And we can make a big change, and we're gonna fight this together.
With regard to the events of October 7th and the rape of women and men and children, the National Council of Jewish Women initiated a resolution with the U.S. Senate on condemning those actions and calling on Congress to condemn sexual violence as a tool of war. So I urge you to go to the National Council of Jewish Women's website and call your member, and also know that Senator Gillibrand was one of the original she was one of the original co-signers. So she cares, and I would also add, I've worked quite a bit with Senator Gillibrand on military rape in the U.S. military, and she, people that work on those issues, they don't get reelected because they tell constituents, oh, I worked on rape. You do that because you care about it. And she's been very committed, and she's very committed on this issue too. So I urge you to call
That's
her.
something they can do from their computer.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I would say two things. First of all, leaders in this fight, they're all different kinds. Some people love to be in the front. There are a few of us here that like to be loud and in front. And then there are some that don't necessarily want the spotlight, but sit in the back and watch and compile data and intelligence to be used at a later date. And those leaders matter too. I think sometimes we live in a world with social media where we think that the size of the platform matters, but the truth is, big deal. Sometimes the biggest impact is when you have a conversation with the person sitting next to you about why you're crying after watching the news one day. Or your non-Jewish friend who says, I don't really understand what's going on, and you talk to them. Those ripple effects are absolutely tremendous. So I would say from an action step beyond that, obviously you can check out the I Believe Israeli Women movement, which will give you a huge amount of information, also all of the work going on sexual violence as a weapon of war. And also just remember, I think this is one of these really crucial times where anti-Semitism isn't a political issue, it's an issue of right or wrong. So no matter where we see it, we need to make sure our voices are heard. Because really, like that old saying, if not now, when? This is the time. So thank you all for what you currently do, have done, and what I know you'll do tomorrow.
And so I think we'll end with my small action, which is inviting Hana and Rivki to the stage, and instead of singing Hatikva, we will hear now the names of all the hostages that are still in Gaza. Hana will read the names of those still alive, and Rivki will read the names of those bodies are being kept there, which is also awful for them and for the families. And let us also maybe even close our eyes whilst we hear these names and pray for their return, whether it is to a proper grave with their family, to be gathered with their forefathers, or whether it is to come home to their families. So thank you, Hana and Rivki. Hana will begin.
אלון אוהל, אריאל קוניו, אבינתן אור, בר קופרשטיין, ביפין ג'ושי, דוד קוניו, עידן אלכסנדר, איתן הורן, איתן מור, אלקנה בוחבוט, אביתר דוד, גלי ברמן, גיא גלבוע דלל, מתן אנגרסט, מתן צנגאוקר, מקסים הרקין, נטפונג פינטה, נמרוד כהן, עמרי מירן, רום ברסלבסקי, שגב חלפון, תמיר נמרוד, יוסף חיים אוחנה, זיו ברמן.
עמירם קופר, אריה זלמנוביץ', אסף חממי, אביב צילי, דניאל עוז, דניאל פרץ, דרור אור, איתן לוי, אליהו מרגלית, גד חגי, גיא אילוז, עידן שיצבי, אילן וייס, ענבר חיימן, איתי חן, ג'שוע לויטו מולל, ג'ודי ויינסטין, ליאור רודלף, מני גודר, מוחמד אל עטרש, עופרה קידר, אורנה נוטרה, רן גבילי, רונן אנגל, סהר ברוך, שי לוינסון, סונתיה אוקרסרי, סודשיסק רינטלק, טל חיימי, תמיר אדר, אוריאל ברוך, יאיר יעקב, יונתן סמרנו, יוסי שרבי, הדר גולדין, השם יקום דמם.
Thank you very much. May they be returned to their place. May they be collected unto their people, alive, and those who are just their bodies. Please, we need them home. We need them for our own healing, and in order to begin healing, in order for going from milchama, which is war, to hachlama, which is the same letter but is healing. We need them. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Gali Lerner. Thank you, Gali. Thank you, Mazi. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Logan. It was a really big honor and pleasure for me.